Hello again, everybody. My name is David Freed, and I'm going to be covering the webinar for you today. Today, most of you are pretty familiar with GovSpend that look through the historical database of government purchasing records, but I want to introduce everybody to our quoting platform, which is GovQuote, and that's what we're going to be covering today. Please feel free to chat in with any questions during the webinar. We will be answering questions after the webinar, and we also have people responding live to your questions throughout. But I do want to make sure that we get every question answered. So to begin, most of you are pretty familiar with GovSpend, as I mentioned. So you're familiar with what we're seeing here. This is the searching part of GovSpend, and this is going to be the first way that you can actually get to GovQuote. If you notice up top, we can look for any bids, so the formal RFPs that are upcoming. We can look for any of the historical spending, search through that, any contact search, or we can jump right over to quotes. And this is where our GovQuote platform is going to be housed. So if you haven't been there before, you can first click on GovQuote, and it's going to bring up all of our open requests. Now, it is important to keep in mind that as of right now, you may have to set up your GovQuote account if it has not already been set up separately. They are two platforms. GovQuote is included within the subscription cost, so there is no additional fee for GovQuote. You can also have additional users. So if you only have a handful of licenses in GovSpend, you can have as many people signed up for GovQuote as you need. And this is going to be dealing with the smaller purchases. So this is going to be the purchases below the bid threshold. Now that does vary from state to state. Most of the time, depending on what states you work in, you'll know it's probably around 25 or 50,000. But that can be as high as 100 or 150,000 for some states. And sometimes some of these requests are for multiple year contracts. So even though it may only be a $50,000 request, it may be a 3 or 4 year contract that they're seeking here that stays below their bid threshold. So they are still able to publish it on GovQuote, but it could open the door up for a decent amount of additional business for you. So if you have not already been on GovQuote, this is going to be the perfect webinar for you. We're going to be walking through, I'm going to be explaining a little bit about the tool. I'm going to be showing you from the beginning all the way to publishing quotes and receiving awards. So right now, I'm just sort of paging through what the current requests are. You can see GovQuote has pretty much everything. We have from rifles to air compressors. This is not just for products too. We also have services as well. It's not really what is on here. It's more about the price range. GovQuote, again, does focus on the purchases below the bid threshold. Okay. So if you've never been on GovQuote before, the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to sign up for GovQuote. And the first step is going to look a little bit like this. So you can go ahead and put your name in. You guys will be a company, and the difference is the company is the one that is able to quote. So that's definitely the one that you want to be. You want to go ahead and give your company your name, and then here you want to put your email address and password. It is important to keep in mind that the password can be the same as GovQuote, or it can be separate. Once you have all the basic information in, we hit continue to get to the next step. So the first question here is what type of industry you are. Now we just have general terms here. This isn't as important as everything else, but you do want to take some time to make sure that you are picking the correct category. The address is going to be very important because we do want to make sure that you are targeting the correct agencies in your area, especially if you are a small business that only works in a certain region. So you'll notice that when you start typing that the addresses will populate here. We do ask that you pick from one of these pre-populated lists. That is going to go into our mapping system. So again, you do get contacted by the right agencies when they're building out requests. number of employees in each company. This can be a ballpark. You don't have to go, oh, I have 51 or 50. You don't have to do that count. So we can just go ahead and ballpark it. And your job title and phone number are completely optional, but you can go ahead and put those in if you would like. GovQuote also tracks your socioeconomic status. So you can go through, we do ask that you self-identify, select the ones if you have multiple ones. So if you're an African American or veteran-owned business, you can go ahead and select off all of those that apply to you. Again, this is what you self-identify as, but keep in mind that you may need to show your work. If you're claiming to be one of these vendors and you actually aren't, the agency may ask for you to prove your qualifications for that standard. So you do want to make sure to be truthful when you fill out this step. Okay. Next, we get to the categories. Again, whenever the agencies publish requests, they select categories, and that's one way you're notified, and then the region that they are in. So you do want to make sure to select the best categories. So let's say I'm in office supplies companies. It is important that you are either looking for products or services. Our categories are based off of the United Nations Standard Products and Service Codes, and the categories will change if you select products or services. Now you can do multiple searches, as sometimes you may have to sort of dig through to figure out exactly what category best fits you. And if you run into any problem at this point, in the bottom right-hand corner is a chat feature, so you can always chat in. We are definitely here to help you make sure that you are getting the best categories, so that way you are getting notified of the correct results. It's also important to keep in mind that these are not set in stone. If you select categories and then you realize I'm not getting the best quotes that are for the products or services I'm selling, we can go back and then change them later, and I'll show you how to get to that part. So again, in our example here, I'm an office supplies company. If I don't know what exactly each of these categories are, I can click view details. It's going to show me what is included in these. So if I do this, maybe I think this one is whiteboards, chalkboards. We can go ahead and do that. You know, you can just keep scrolling through, keep selecting the categories that best fit your company for what you sell. And I do want to show you the difference between products and services. So we can see all of these categories here. Now, if I switch it over to services only and hit search, again, it's going to give me a whole different list of categories. So now instead of actually selling chalkboards or whiteboards, this is for maintenance and support training services. So it is very important that you do select the best categories, so you're not getting notified of a bunch of requests that you don't sell. Okay. Once you go ahead and select your best categories, you hit next. And this is where we get to select our region that we work in. Right now, it's just broken down via states, but there will be a point later if you're a smaller company and you realize you don't want to cover a whole state, where you can actually go in and shrink that down to counties. Again, I'll show you that in a little bit later. You can also select all. If you are a nationwide company, you can go ahead and select all of the states at once. Just keep in mind that you will get requests from all of the states then. So if, for example, we're here in Florida, if we're only really doing business in the Southeast, we wouldn't want to be notified when somebody in Washington State is publishing a request, because it's just going to be noise to us. It's something that's just going to bother us and we don't really need to see. Okay. Once we selected all of our states, we can go ahead and hit finish. And now we're going to come to our login page. So the first thing I want to point out here, and this is very important, this is the #1 asked questions from vendors, is when you go in and you first sign in, you want to jump right in and start quoting. But if you notice here at the very top, you are not able to submit quotes until you verify your email. Verifying your account means that we're going to send an email to you. It's going to have a link. You just have to click on that link and your account will be verified. You can resend it if you did not get it at this point, but you do need to verify your account before you can start submitting quotes. So if you come in here and you're trying to submit quotes, you're going to come in here to chat feature and say, why can't I do it? The first thing we're going to ask is, did you verify your account? Okay, so we're going to jump into an account that has already been verified here. So we can see again, it's similar products, similar services, and I just want to start and sort of show you everything that we have here. First, we're looking at open request, and this is going to be where we come when we initially log in. So this is going to be all the requests that are currently open that are in the region I do business and are looking for the product or service that I'm selling. Next would be my quotes. This is another question we get asked a lot. After I quote, how can I be sure that my quote went through? One of the ways is to come up to my quotes. It's going to show you everything that you have previously quoted here. So these are all requests that may have been due 6 months ago, published 6 months ago, but has not been closed yet. So I'm still in the running to win that bid. All of those will appear here under pending. Anything I've previously won will appear here under awarded, and then closed is anything where I did quote, but unfortunately I was not selected as the best quote. Keep in mind when quoting that it is not necessarily the best price. Everybody seems to think that the best price is who wins the quote. We've seen only 20% of quotes on our platform go to the lowest quoter. Lots of times it's about customer service and the reputation of your company. So just because you're not quoting the lowest does not mean that you're going to lose every quote. Okay. I'm going to go back to the open request. The next thing you'll notice here is by default, we're looking at my categories. It's clearly, I just want to see the products or services I'm selling. Every now and then you can definitely jump over here to see the all categories to see if there's any request in my area that's not a category that I selected, but maybe it's a product or service I'm selling. Keep in mind that a lot of the agencies, the person publishing the request is not the subject matter expert. All the agencies do have support and we do review their requests, but sometimes things get missed because sometimes even we don't know exactly what the product or service is. So you might want to pop over to the all categories just to see what's coming up and to see if maybe there's a category that you didn't pick where a lot of the products that you sell or services that you provide are there, so you can update your categories then. Okay. So now that we've covered the basics here, I'm going to go in. This is a current open request, and this is something that I sell. So I sell these whiteboards. I can click into the quote, and I just want to work from top down. This is going to show the date that the request was published. There is a randomly assigned number here, and this is something that you can use to reference. If you ever have a question or want to check with somebody on support, when you chat in, you can use this number so we can look up the request and provide you an accurate answer. All of the requests will have a title. They'll select their categories here. They'll give a description so we can see exactly what the product or service is. Some agencies are very descriptive, some are a little vague. If there's not enough information for you here to provide an accurate quote, like let's say that this measurement wasn't here, there's obviously different size whiteboards, and we're like, I'm not sure which whiteboard to quote. That's when we can go over here to the ask a question. So the first thing we have to do is accept their terms and conditions, but we can type any message in here, send the message, and that will begin our chat with this agency so we can get the accurate information that we need to submit the best quote. Okay. We can also see how many quotes they're seeking and how many people have already responded. So in this case, they're looking for 10 quotes and they already got one. And lastly, we'll see the due date. So we have to respond before October 30th at 10 a.m. There is an all chat feature. Sometimes if you have a question, like again, let's say that this measurement wasn't here, I'm sure every vendor that sees this is going to want to ask that same question. Hey, what size whiteboard do you need? What the agency will do is they could respond here where they would just say what the measurement is. If you chat in this feature, it's going to be visible to anybody that has quoted, but your name will still be hidden. So even though we'll see another company responded, or the agency responded, another company responded. It's not going to be the same as the ask a question, or it's just you and the vendor and the agency communicating. Okay, so let's say that we see this request, and this is something that we do want to quote. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click send quote. So the first thing I want to do is I want to type in my price. So what's my price I'm going to quote? I'm going to quote this at $900. Vendors sometimes get stuck on this next part, this quote valid until. Now, you don't have to fill this out. You can leave this blank. But if you want to, you definitely can put a due date where the vendor or the agency has to respond before this date. Keep in mind, we saw this was due on the 30th. Most requests are not awarded the same day that it is due. So if you do put something, hey, this is by the 30th, and maybe the agency is not going to actually make up their mind till the 6th, that might have taken us out of the running. So you can always push it out a few months if you want, to make sure that the agency does have time to actually decide. Again, a lot of the people publishing these requests for agencies are not the end user, so they have to go back to the department. They'll take the quotes back and talk to the department before they make the decision. And if we've all worked with government before, we know they do not do things as quickly as we do here in the private sector. Again, we have to accept the terms and conditions before we can submit the quote, and then we could put any message in here. I'm just going to go ahead and write hi. Once we hit send, this will go out live. Now, again, another question we get is, how can I confirm that my quote went through? The first thing we'll see here is it pops up over here where we can see our name, which is company. We can see the price, and we can see all the categories that we selected. But again, if we jump up here to the top to my quotes, now under pending, now here's my whiteboard. Okay, so now we're here, we see whiteboard. Now we see this little blue bubble pop up over here that says one new message, which means that this vendor or this agency has responded to us. So we can come back into the quote. Again, here's the one new message. And we can click back and open the chat. Here we go. Agency just said hello. Thank you for quoting. Now, at this point, you can add any attachments, and you could do that when you're actually submitting the quote as well. One thing agencies really like is to get that PDF. If you put your quote, not only are you putting the price up here, but you're putting together a PDF and sending it to them. Again, as I mentioned a few times, that they send this information back to the department. So it's easy for them just to print out all of the PDFs, send that information to the department so they can review it. Plus, it's also a great opportunity to get your company name, your name, phone number, email address sent to the agency in the document that they can easily save to their computer or go ahead and print out for future reference. Okay, so once our quote's in, now how will we know when we win the quote? Everything is communicated to you via email, and there's also notifications up here. But once we win, the quote will then move from my quotes to awarded. Once we go into awarded, here's this whiteboard, request updated, so there's something new. We can see that we got this new notification up here. So we can click into it and see now we're in green. This was awarded today. This was awarded to us. And here's our certificate. Again, sometimes people will ask, well, okay, so I was awarded, but the agency necessarily didn't contact me right away. Sometimes that can take time. They may be a week or two until they contact you, but it's also very important to know that this chat stays open. So we can see we just got one new message here. So we can go back and continue chatting with the agency to figure out what the next steps are. So if we come down here, here's the next steps. Please contact me at this number. So now I know, okay, the agency is ready to start their procurement process, give me the invoice, and I can provide the product or service. Okay, and that is really everything from building to quoting to awarding. The last thing I want to show is a little bit on the back end, and we can get to our settings by coming up to our name and clicking settings. Here, I'm going to run through these tabs. The first one, the My Profile tab. This is where if I need to change my email address or password, I can do it here. I can also update my company's information. Maybe if my company moves and I want to change that address, I can do that here. I can also select whatever socioeconomic status, maybe something changes where I now fit into a different classification. Remember, I said the categories were not set in stone. This is where you can come over, you can remove any categories. If you're realizing that they're not providing the quotes that you had hoped to get, you can do additional searches to add more. And here you can also change the locations that you do business in. Again, here you can actually shrink it down into counties if you just want to focus on certain counties. The notifications, everything is done via an email from us. So before you're actually awarded, all of the communications from the agency will be done via GovQuote. The agencies like to keep their communication on GovQuote because they have a complete audit record, and this is something that we save for them, and it's something that they might need to provide to an auditor or a committee 3 or 4 years down the road. So they like having this everything in one place. If you quote them here and then maybe you know the agency and you start emailing them off the platform, now they have to get this quote, they have to find the emails that you originally communicated with them, and it makes it a little bit messier for them. They like this one-stop shop here. So you will receive an email from us every time you get a new request that you can quote, quote changes, or you've been awarded. You do have the option to turn these off. If this is a tool you're going to be in 2 or 3 times a day and you don't want to get flooded with emails when you know you're going to be checking it anyways, you can always come in here, just turn them off simply by checking. Remember, users, you can have as many users as you would like in GovQuote. So if you do have if you're a larger company nationwide and you have 30 or 40 different reps across the 50 states, you can add all of those different reps in, so that way they can quote anything in their territory. You also do have the ability to refer another company. Sometimes you really work with a partnership with another company where maybe you provide part of a service and they provide the products, or vice versa. So if that ever happens, you can definitely go ahead, add their email address here. It's going to send an email from us saying that you're on GovQuote and you would like them to join GovQuote. They will join as a separate account. But again, if it's a company that you really work well together where you need them to find you additional business, you can invite them on GovQuote as well. Okay, and that is everything I have for you today. Thank you all for joining me. I hope that you all learned a little bit about GovQuote, and if you haven't been using it, this is definitely going to open the door for additional business within the government space. GovQuote is constantly growing, and as you can see, there's always requests published every day, and it's just going to keep growing and growing, and we would like to have you part of our family as well. At this time, I would like to answer any questions. So if there are any questions that you've been saving till the end, please chat in now, and I'll see if I can provide some answers for you. Okay, so the first question was about the notifications. I'm going to go back to the notifications here. A check means that you are receiving emails. No check means that you are not. So if it was set up like this and you were to save this means that you would get the emails every time new requests are published, so on and so forth. When they're unchecked, it means you are not receiving any notifications. Okay, I got another question about receiving the email. what if I don't receive the email to verify my account? When you saw in the other tab that I was on, you do have the option to resend this email. So if you don't get it, you can resend the email. It does come from a generic GovQuote email. It's notifications at govquote.net. So you can always search for that. Or you can have it resent. Sometimes we do end up in spam because it comes from that automated, but you can also chat in and we can help you get that link as well. I just got a question about will this webinar be online? Yes, we will post everything online. So if you want to share this with anybody else, you can definitely share it with your team to just give them a basic walkthrough of GovQuote. Okay, I do not have any additional questions at this time, so thank you everybody for joining me, and we look forward to bringing you on GovQuote.